Hello and welcome to my Emotions Masterclass. I am Lotus Fire and I am so honored and excited to share this with you. We're just gonna dive into it, but I just wanted to suggest or invite you to grab a cup of tea, get a notebook, shake out your body, take some deep breaths, whatever you feel to, as we begin to unfold a bit of emotions with each other. There will be lots of explanations and also some practices in this. Take it as slow or as fast as you need to. I invite you to do the exercises with me or watch it all together and go back later, and to hold this as a kind of container for yourself. It can be important to have containers and spaces where we can explore things in, and that's the aim of this with me. And I really encourage you to reach out if stuff comes up for you through this or after this. And this kind of work is really well supported in deep spaces, like in the work that I do one-on-one or in groups, but is also definitely meant for individual and in practice and relationships in communities. So let's get into it. I want to kick this off by sharing a bit of my story with emotions and my journey from totally numb to living in the mind and exploring emotions from a mind-based understanding perspective, to moving into my body and my wild self and emotional expression in the way that I believe is really truly how it is meant to be and how we are designed to respond to emotions. So when I was 17, I started on my healing journey with all sorts of darkness and fear and numbing, and really took a step into the unknown. And at that time, I didn't really have any kind of, I knew that like emotional intelligence was kind of a thing, and I had this sense, I always loved working with children and spent a lot of time working with children, and so I understood that for children, emotions were, I could see how they expressed and moved with emotions, and I had an understanding that there was an important aspect of emotions and allowing emotions, but I didn't have that in my life. I would have regular panic attacks. I had lots of depressive episodes and long times of being in really dark places, and just the only way for me through them at the time was through numbing and avoiding absolutely everything. And I started to go to therapy, which is how my journey with healing began, and started learning about emotions and just had that space to kind of express a bit of sadness. But even still, I was not at all like, I was barely crying, and it was like when I had an emotion come up, like if I did cry, it was like, the dam had burst and it would come out in this intense panic attack, like lots of crying and feeling like out of control, and like it just hit me and it's just happening. And so I was certainly feeling some feelings, but only when it was like the dam had broken, and that was the only way. And so I would just keep them in, shove them down, and they would occasionally spill out everywhere. And that was it. And I continued on my healing journey for a long time like that. And I, developed an understanding of emotions and the importance of emotions, and I developed a kind of logical respect for and understanding of emotions. But it was all in my head. And, there was certainly a little bit of a shift in allowing myself to cry maybe, but not much. Like mostly it was like, oh, I have to go to therapy and, I can cry there. And really it was also like just crying. Like I didn't have a sense of like the kind of spectrum of emotions and how they fit into my life on a day-to-day basis. And so then I started to do a bit more alternative therapy in a few different ways, started to do some energy work with different people and just explore alternative options. And I also found, I'd been doing EMDR for a couple of years before then, which is a certain type of therapy, and I'm not advocating for it. by saying that I've done it. But my therapist also did art therapy and horse therapy. And that brought in a few other elements into my journey, and really the experience of, it's like a lived experience of healing and being able to bring, like, I was doing the art stuff that I was doing in my house, and that brought a different element of it into my life in a different way. And through doing the EMDR, I was having all of these visions of this intense, like, murderous rage coming up. And I understood, because of the trauma that I have, that rage was valid. Like, on a logical level, I was like, of course it makes sense that I have a murderous, intense rage within me. But I didn't really know, like, what to do. Like, I was having these visions of, like, this, like, intense, like, you know, sound and body stuff, but I didn't feel like it was safe to, like, do that, or I didn't even know I could do that. And so I started to go to these cycling classes. I was living in Nashville, Tennessee, and I was going to these cycling classes called Crank. It's kind of like Soul Cycle, where the lights are really dark, the music is really loud, and it's a really intense class, and you're encouraged to move a lot, and you're encouraged to, like, scream and, like, let it all out, like, leave your, you know, stress behind, and, like, yeah, get it out. And so I would go to these cycling classes as a way to express and move with my anger. And then I would do other kind of stuff. I started training for a sprint triathlon, and so I would do, while I was working out, I would express some of my anger. And sometimes in the car, I would put on a song, and I would, you know, scream and hit the steering wheel a little. And I just naturally knew that that's what I needed to do, but I didn't feel fully safe enough to explore with it. And I wasn't really conscious of what I was doing. And so I remember one of the last sessions with my therapist before I moved to Australia, I had this, you know, this deep rage coming up, and I was like, I don't know, like, how can I do that kind of thing in this space? And can I do that kind of thing in this space? Like, is it okay to, like, scream and, like, beat the chair? I don't know. And my therapist ended up kind of inviting me to do that, and saying that we could. And she got down, we kneeled in front of the couch, and she got down next to me and did it with me. And it was just this profound, beautiful moment of myself, one, speaking up that this is what I needed and wanted to do, and two, being met in that place and being seen and witnessed and held in that place. And I still really wasn't putting it together that, like, we move emotions as humans, as mammals, we move emotions with our body and our voice. And I didn't, like, it's like such a simple thing to know and such a life-changing thing to know, but I'd never heard that. I'd never heard anyone say it. Like, I was like looking at these, like, wheel of emotions and, like, charts, and, like, watching all these TED Talks and, like, trying to get everything I could about it. And I didn't hear anyone say emotions are meant to be moved with the body and the voice. And it wasn't until a couple years later, or maybe like 1 year later after that time on the couch, that I found that wisdom. So when I was about 4 months postpartum, I found this business called Innate Wisdom Connection, and it's run by a man and a woman named Phoenix and Mike, and they do the most incredible, profound healing I've ever experienced. And it is their work that introduced to me the idea that we move emotions with our body and our voice. And like I said, this is something that I naturally was learning and was doing, but I didn't have the words for it, and I didn't understand what I needed, really. And so I couldn't just lean into it in the same way that I am able to now. And so, that's what I'm going to talk about today, is moving emotions with the body and the sound. And I'm also going to talk about some of the things that get in the way of moving with our emotions. So first, I just want to chat a little bit about how our brain works and where the emotions are coming from. So we have the oldest part of our brain, which is the reptilian brain, and that controls all of our kind of like survival instincts. So, crocodiles, there's that saying about crocodile tears, because crocodiles don't have emotions. They eat their young, like survival is the most important thing for a crocodile. So this controls like our need for like our fight and flight responses, and our need for food, and to reproduce and make more humans, and all of those things come from the reptilian brain. And then we have our mammalian brain, which is where emotions come into the picture. And all mammals communicate with emotions. And a lot of animals that live in herds, especially, emotions are how they can communicate what's going on. And that's how it's meant to be for us as well. We're meant to be living with each other in community, and to be seeing each other's emotions and our own emotions, because they signal so much to us beyond what we can communicate with our logical mind and all of these fancy words. And so the newer part of our brain, our neocortex, is where we can do a lot of the fancy things that have gotten us to where we are. And I see a lot of stuff out there that really emphasizes the importance of the neocortex and like having this new, let's evolve. And I want to emphasize the ancient wisdom of our reptilian brain and our mammalian brain, because all of these things work together. And the only reason that we have a neocortex is because of how we've changed and evolved in the past, and the past parts of our brain. So for me, it's about integrating all of these things together and becoming aware of how we can best work with what we have in our brains and the rest of our body. And so, I also want to note that we live in a very patriarchal society, which refers to the masculine shadow. So this is nothing anti-men at all. The patriarchy harms men as well, and everyone that lives in and under patriarchal systems and culture. And the patriarchy is not about feeling at all. It's about production and capitalism, and making things more productive, really, is like the basics of it. And being smart, and the mind, and pushing past things. And it's not about the darkness and the unknown and chaos and emotions and crazy people and all of those things. And so our society has really conditioned us that it is not safe to feel. And with a lot of people and in a lot of environments, it isn't safe to feel. It's like considered weird or not okay to be like crying at work, or to be like bursting with joy. This isn't just about emotions like fear and anger and shame. It also impacts the rest of our emotions, because we can only feel the depth of all of it when we've explored the depth of different aspects of it. And so when we ignore and repress and shut down on our anger, we also shut down on the depths of passion and love and purpose that we can feel. And when we shut down on the depths of our grief and our sadness, we also shut down on the depths of our joy and the great abundance and the our curiosity and all of the other things that we see as so beautiful and valuable today. And especially with the New Age culture, there's a lot of spiritual bypassing stuff going on, and saying that we just need to be feeling grateful, gratitude and joy and love and light, and choose love over fear. Love and fear, you can choose love and be afraid, they're not exclusive. And I believe that love is an energy that is always there, and there's abundant love available all the time, but we don't always feel it, and that's okay. We're not meant to be. And so, what I really want to emphasize here is that whatever is coming up for you in any moment is useful. And there's magic in it, and there's a signal in it, because our emotions are here to signal to us something. We don't know what, and we don't need to know what, and it's not about figuring out what with our minds. It's about expressing it and moving it with the body and the voice, and trusting in it, trusting that we have emotions, that we just have emotions, and that they need to be felt and expressed. When we don't express them and we hold on to them and we repress them because of what we were taught to do, all sorts of things can happen. Things can come out in our relationship, with a partner, with a child, with a friend. Things can come out in our body with all sorts of symptoms and twitches or pains, or chronic illnesses. I think depression is also linked to a lot of suppressed grief and anger. And I think anxiety is often a lot of unexpressed fear. And so a lot of the things that we have going on in our society today, I believe, are symptoms of the emotional repressed patriarchal culture that we live in and under, and that we've been conditioned in. And so often, we hear as children things like, don't be sad, there's nothing to be scared of, everything's fine, pick yourself up, you'll be fine, and all of that kind of stuff. And, it's not okay to be angry, there's nothing to be angry about, get over it, you need to knock it off, stop it. And imagine a world where we said to our children when they're afraid, I see that you're scared, I'm here with you right now. It's okay to be afraid, and you're not alone. I see that you're sad. Is there anything you want to share with me? And I think as parents, we often feel, or anyone around children, we often feel this like, oh my God, it's my fault, and this desire to fix, which is also something from the masculine shadow. And it's a skill that I think the masculine energy is very useful, like the fix it and problem solver part that is in all of us. Is very useful, but it's been turned into this like deep thing in our society. And we often are all trying to fix each other in some way, instead of trusting in each other and holding whatever is coming up for ourselves and for them, and drawing boundaries and all of those things as well. And so this brings me to the idea of triggers, because often other people trigger emotions in us, and it might be someone on social media, it might be a partner, it might be a show, it could be anything that triggers us, an article that we see. Triggers can come up at any point throughout the day. And I believe that triggers are gifts, but only when we are safe enough and we have the tools to know what to do when a trigger comes up. So often a trigger is coming up to point us to something that is not yet healed. And so something happens in the present moment, and we often don't know what it's about in the moment, because our emotional mammalian brain doesn't have anything to do with logic. There is no sense of time for emotions. This is why often when we're in high emotional states, we say things like, you always do this, you never do this, because when the feeling comes up, when we're feeling sad or angry, there's no sense of time with it. And so we say things like always, and often there's also an element of an inner child coming up, and children also don't have a sense of time. And so it's important to allow what's there without letting the shiny new part of the brain and all the thinking parts jump in and be like, this is what this means, this is this, that's not logical, this is dumb, whatever the judgments are that we have to others or ourselves. But so when a trigger comes up, it's pointing to something that isn't healed. Sometimes there's something that is actually going on in the present moment, for example, my 2-year-old recently with breastfeeding was saying to me, lay down, because he wanted to breastfeed. So he was telling me to lay down, mommy, lay down. And he'd been doing this for a while, and I didn't really think much of it. And then I realized in just one moment that it was triggering some stuff from my childhood and stuff around sexual abuse. And so all of a sudden it became this like huge feeling of panic, and I didn't know what to do, and it became hard to breathe. And every time before when he'd been saying those things, there probably was some trigger, but I wasn't quite aware of it. But I'm sure it was coming out, somehow in my life, in my relationship with him or my partner or whoever, or in my body somehow. And so I moved with the sadness and the fear and the anger about what was coming up with me. And I could say, oh, that's about the present, and, my child shouldn't be bossing me around, and I'm just angry because he just is breastfeeding so much, and I need to, stop breastfeeding, or I need to set better boundaries and whatever, which all of those things may be true. Like, setting boundaries has been helpful and useful, and feeling the emotions and expressing the emotion with the body and the sound is the most important thing to do first. We cannot tap into our logical brain properly until we have expressed the emotion. And once we've expressed the emotion, often there's a different sense or a different kind of knowing of what it is I need to do next. And so knowing that when a trigger comes up, it's not usually about the present. Often there's some kind of message or something about what might be useful in the present in the relationship, but often there can be a lot of projection going on from people in the past and from events in the past. And so when something comes up, it is a gift in the way that if you move with it, if you can find safety in yourself or with someone else to move with it and express the emotion, there will be healing in it, because through feeling there is healing. And just a note on safety here, in that I believe that we will only kind of express and allow as much up as we can handle, which doesn't mean that we always feel like we can handle it, but also that in this practice of expressing emotions, which I'll go into a bit more, I don't think that, like, in my experience with everyone I've worked with in this work, it's actually quite hard to just practice or to consciously move with emotions, because we have so much conditioning around not doing it, which is why having a safe witness and someone who is, holding space for this kind of work is really, really useful. And that we can, do it on our own in our relationships, but often for the kind of depths of the healing that may be required, we need safe witness and held space. And so also to note that we carry ancestral and intergenerational trauma. And so sometimes it can feel like the depths of our pain is it's like, how could I have this much pain at all? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And often when someone in the family line decides to show up and heal, it means that we also are showing up for the ancestral and intergenerational stuff that we're carrying, which involves cultural stuff and all sorts of things going on there. And often when we're in the emotion, it feels like it might never end. It's very common that people have the fear that if I start crying, I will never stop crying. And this is the same thing around emotions not having any sense of time. And so if we begin to practice with emotions, we can learn and we can teach ourselves and relearn that emotions pass. Whatever the emotion is, it passes. It's like a wave. And when we can, often there's an inner child there as well. And so it can be really useful to kind of imagine or actually get something to represent your inner child and to hold them and to say, I see that you're really scared and that you're afraid that, if we start to cry, it might never end. I really want to explore with this, and I'm going to hold you safe right here while we do it. Or, you could even, if it's an emotion that's really scaring them, like a lot of people have stuff around rage and being really hurt by sideways, unexpressed anger coming out in a violent or aggressive way. And so it could be about holding that inner child and placing them somewhere safe, wrapping them up in a little blanket and putting them in the other room and saying, I'm going to put a timer on for 5 minutes or 30 seconds, whatever, and I'm going to express and explore with moving my emotions, because I really would like to heal some of the stuff that you went through, because often what we're healing is stuff from childhood. And I wanted to touch on a few emotions that society really is not about, which are shame, anger, confusion, and fear. So in our society, pretty much the only acceptable emotions are happiness, love, and maybe like a little bit of joy, and maybe a tiny bit of sadness. Like if somebody has died, you can be a little sad, that's okay. But otherwise, we're pretty uncomfortable with the vast majority of emotions, and even with the depths of joy and exuberance and, sexuality and sensualness and all of those things. So shame is a feeling of not being enough. It's a feeling that has to do with our sense of belonging. And it's a bit different from guilt, because guilt is kind of, I have done something wrong. And it's not, I've done something that's not really aligned with how I want to be acting. And shame is around, I am a horrible person. I am not good enough. I am to this, I'm to that. I don't deserve to be here. People don't like me. There's something wrong with me. All of that stuff is shame. Anger is a big one. And especially as women and female-bodied people, I think that there's a lot of stuff around anger that we're conditioned to shut down on. And there's also a lot of stuff to be angry about. If you're not feeling anger in this world, I'm gonna just be real here, like what is going on? Like what is going on that has convinced you to shut down on your anger that much? Because there is so much that is wrong in the world. And anger is about, this is not right, this is not okay. It's about boundary violations. And anger can be really, really helpful to help us find what we're passionate about, and to help us find a sense of purpose, and to help us stand up for ourselves, and to help us hold boundaries. Anger is such an amazing, useful, beautiful emotion. And I have seen people expressing anger in ways that like my whole body like tingles, and I get like chills everywhere from witnessing it. And many of us have been hurt deeply in the past as a result of unexpressed anger coming out sideways. So I'm going to invite in the idea here that when anger hurts someone, it's not actually anger. Anger is just an energy and an emotion, and that energy cannot hurt anyone. However, when someone avoids the anger and pushes down the anger, it's going to come out one way or another. And that is what can hurt people. And so often, if somebody is shutting down on their anger, when we think of anger, often we think of these things that are violent. You know, they're really hurting people, or destructive to oneself, or aggressive, or whatever. And what I'm going to teach about anger is very safe, although it can be quite confronting for people to witness, because often, like I said, we have been hurt. And so this is where a lot of the inner child work around holding the child while anger is coming up in ourselves and in someone else is really important. And that also there are lots of people that are holding on to anger and letting it come out sideways, and that is very real. And so I'm not dismissing any of the wounding that comes up around anger. It's very valid and understandable. But I want to invite in a different way that we can reclaim anger, and we can stand in our power, and we can form a new path for ourselves and future generations to come around how to feel and move with this powerful emotion without hurting each other or causing harm. I also wanted to talk about confusion, because that is one that is super not okay in our patriarchal culture. So confusion and the kind of I don't know space is really, really not welcome in our society. We are all about the knowing and the clarity. We want so much clarity all of the time. We want certainty, and we don't like being confused and not knowing and being not sure and like, what's the answer and how do I, and that can really, really bring up a lot of freeze in people and shut down around that emotion. And it's a really, really important one, and it's really helpful and useful, and there's so much magic in confusion. Fear is another big one, which, like I said earlier, I think often that unexpressed fear can result in a lot of anxiety. So when we shut down on the emotion, we build this other coping mechanism from the other part of our brain and around thoughts. And these thoughts run around and around to help us avoid the feeling. And this like anxiety, racing mind kind of thing happens. And then when we have too much of it going on, often an anxiety attack or a panic attack can come up, because it's like that sideways spilling over the dam breaking of emotions, and it has to come out somehow. And so it's going to come out in a really intense, moment or moments, instead of being moved with when it comes up regularly. And also when it doesn't come up, because we can also work with practicing with emotions when they're not there, which is really helpful, and kind of like going to the gym for our emotional selves. So I also wanted to touch on emotions and children. So I believe that it's important to express our emotions around children. And as a parent, this can be tricky. There's a lot of stuff out there on gentle parenting and conscious parenting that recommends that parents just breathe in and remain calm and hold space for their children while they go through intense emotions. Now, I think that that is a great thing to do if it is what's real and possible, and
And also acknowledging that for a lot of people and with whatever you're carrying, it's not easy. And there's other stuff that is also possible and also useful. So one big thing for me as a parent is that I want my child to know how challenging parenthood is, because I didn't know. And I think there's this big like conspiracy in our society around pretending like parenting is great to our children. And I think that we're doing a huge disservice to them and to ourselves by doing that. And showing our emotions around parenthood is so useful in so many different ways. So if we need to communicate with them that we're feeling scared because they're climbing on a tree or whatever it is, often it comes out sideways in a like, get down, don't get on there, don't do that again, all of these things. Instead of us being like, I feel scared when you do that. And when we show it with our whole body and we let out what's really there, we, one, teach them how to move with their own fear. And two, we send a very clear signal that is like that is exactly what an emotion was for. Emotions are to communicate to people in our culture and around us about what's going on. And if a child has crossed a boundary and we express anger in a safe way, that is also great because it teaches them how to express their anger in a safe way. And it shows them that they have clearly crossed a boundary. And so I am not suggesting, and I will never suggest, that it is okay to be aggressive or violent towards a child. That is not at all what I am suggesting. I'm also not shaming, parents that have been in those situations, because most likely there is old trauma and things going on there. And I'm all about space for us all to heal whatever is going on. But for me, if I'm feeling angry about something, I might just kind of turn around and like, something like that. And there's a lot of talk around like helping your child and calming their nervous system and stuff. And I think that what's important to know here is that there is a big distinction between sideways emotions and emotions coming out unconsciously because we're not feeling them, and consciously expressing emotion. And this is where the practice is so important, because it can help us build the new neural pathway that it is safe to feel and it is safe to move with our body and our voice. So then when the emotion comes up and we're like right in that space, we already have a bit of that pathway going, so we can tap into that instead of the old pathways of shutting things down. Because even if you've followed the gentle parenting, conscious parenting stuff, and you are just taking in deep breaths and you're really feeling quite angry about something that your child has done or is whatever's happening, that anger is going to come out some way, one way or another. And like I said earlier, it might be in your relationship, your intimate relationship, or a friendship. It might be towards yourself internally. Whatever it is, it's going to come out one way or another. And so this is about finding healthy and safe ways to express it. And it may be that like if there's a lot of stuff going on, you decide to step into the other room and express. But I think that it's actually quite useful for our children to see us expressing emotion. And I'll go through, like I said, a few different ways that we can move with emotion. If there's a lot going on also, and it doesn't feel okay to express emotions in the moment, and you do feel like you can kind of put them to the side and remain calm and just hold space for your child, that is also really great if you're committed to expressing the emotion later. So you can, have the emotion come up and you can go, oh, I'm feeling really angry right now. I'm going to commit to myself to feel that later. However, if we say that we're going to do that to ourselves and we don't actually do it, we lose trust within our own selves, and then the emotions just continue to come up any chance that they can get because they don't trust that you're actually going to feel them later. And I would say that situation is more useful if you're very clear that the emotion is about something from the past, which, like I said, most of it, because most of us have so much repressed emotion, most of it is about the past. But also, I just want to reiterate that it can be so helpful to show emotions to your child to help communicate boundaries and fears and safety and all of those kinds of things as well. And also that children express what we are not expressing and what we are holding on to. So often if we're experiencing deep grief or anger or whatever the thing is, our children pick up on that and they express it for us. So if you notice that your child is having, lots of tantrums or big emotional expression stuff, I encourage you to reflect on what is happening in me right now. What am I avoiding? And maybe express it with them. And you can say to them, I see that you're feeling whatever, you're doing this thing, and describe what's happening. And I'm here with you in this. I see you and I hear you, and we're going to get through this together. I'm feeling really angry too, or I'm feeling really sad too. I'm feeling really confused. I also just want to reiterate that through feeling there is healing, and there's so much we can reclaim through our feelings that is magic and beautiful and wild and mysterious and just alive. I think that so many of us don't actually know what it is to feel really truly alive and present, and there is just so much gold and gifts to be explored in emotions and feeling. So I'm just gonna go into now a practice around emotions and a few different ways that we can express emotion. So the first way that I'm going to talk about, I call an emotion circle, and basically it's just choosing a feeling. You can do it in a group of people as well, and moving with that feeling with the body and the sound. Now, this practice is a bit like going to the gym. So we go to the gym to work out our muscles. We could just say, I'm just going to build my muscles by picking up whatever I pick up throughout the day, and whenever I do it, that's fine. But we go to the gym to build our strength and, muscles and whatever, and to move our body. And so this is like going to the gym for emotions. So you don't need to be feeling the emotion when you practice it. And it helps to have a lived experience that we can move with emotions, that they do change. And also that when we practice emotions, if you just put on a smile right now, you'll notice you can feel a little bit of that feeling of happiness. So when we practice, it does actually signal a little bit to the brain that we are feeling that. And often there's a lot of discomfort around doing this, which I totally understand. And I myself thought it was a very weird and strange thing to do at first, but I went with it because I know that if I feel really uncomfortable about something, usually there's gold in that. And if it's not a hard thing to do, to just give myself a few minutes to call out a few emotions and move them with my body and voice. And so I was like, why do I feel so disgusted and uncomfortable about this when it's just a small acting exercise? What's really going on there that I'm like, no, I don't know about that one. I'm not going to give it a go, even just have a little try. So if that's what you're thinking when you watch this, I hear you, and I'm really going to invite you to give it a go, to explore with this and to see how it feels, and to check in with yourself and your intuition around whether or not it is useful for you. So this is just a practice. You can imagine if I was an actor, what would an actor do if they were feeling sad, happy, whatever. So first we'll go with a bit of happiness. Yay! Oh, hooray! Oh, it's such a beautiful day outside. Oh, yay, and a bit of joy. Woohoo! Yippee! Yay! Yeah! Yes! And moving into a bit of calm and peacefulness. And if you don't know what an emotion sounds like, just letting the voice make some sound, just letting out a sigh and seeing what's there. Moving into a bit of sadness. Anger. Why did they do that? That's not right. feels so good. I feel free in my body. And a bit of confusion. I don't know what to do. What do I do next? Oh God. I'm not sure what to do. Oh God. I don't know. I don't like this. I don't know. I'm just not sure. I don't know what to do. And a bit of shame. Oh God. Why am I doing this? Oh, what are people gonna think of me? Oh my God, I'm disgusting. Don't look at me. Oh no, I'm a horrible person. Oh no, oh God. And a bit of love. Maybe feeling a bit of gratitude for yourself for showing up. Oh, what an incredible life this is. So I recommend this practice daily. You can set a timer if it's something new and uncomfortable for just a few minutes. And let's just take a few deep breaths together. In through the nose. Letting the belly fall. Letting your shoulders fall. I'm going to show you the best way that I know to move with anger and to practice moving with anger. So I just really want to emphasize that this is not a practice only for when anger comes up. This is a practice to tap into your power and your purpose and your passion and your sense of life. I feel so alive after I do this practice. I can feel my heart beating in my chest, and I feel my fire and my sense of internal power come to life when I tap into my anger in this way. And so, you may want to watch this masterclass with someone else and, let them know what you want to explore here. Or you may just want to set up a safe space when you're alone and do it. Some people ask me about other people around and in houses nearby and stuff. I personally have never had a problem with it. But if someone did knock on my door, I would just say, oh, I was, just doing some emotional expression. Other people that I know say things like, oh, I was just doing an acting class or something. You can also put on a loud song, and that may help. I also know people that like to scream into pillows or, do it in their car or whatever. So whatever feels safe to you, I'd encourage you to explore with that. Also knowing though that there often is a lot of resistance and stuff that prevents us from doing things, and it's not actually a real big concern in the way that most likely our fear is telling us that it is. So if you're really not sure, maybe move with a bit of fear first and I don't know if I can do this, and what if people hear me? And then I recommend that you give it a go. So like I said, emotions are moved with the body and the sound, and this is a great way to move with anger. I also have a baseball bat that I use sometimes. I also know people that have punching bags that they use. Some people really like the shredding thing. Anger is really, really held in our jaw and with our hands as well. And so some people like to actually be able to rip into things with their teeth or shred paper. And you can also roll up a towel and, put it together with some rubber bands. Go buy some kale if you don't have rubber bands. And you can use the towel to hit the thing as well. So just remembering the sound is super important when you do this. Often people start and kind of, and you will wear yourself out. And there will still be a lot of emotion in there if you're not using the voice. So here we go. If while you watch this, you want to hold on to your inner child. How could you? When you've finished, whether it's that you've set a timer for yourself or you just feel to finish where you are, taking a few deep breaths into your body and feeling how it feels. Maybe reflecting on how it felt before you began, what came up during, but mostly just feeling yourself in this body, in this place, in this moment. For me, after I release anger, I feel more alive. I feel this deep sense of power and strength. I feel my heart, like anger to me is it's so deeply connected to love as well. And often there's also deep grief and sadness that sits under the surface of anger. So just noticing what's ever there, maybe moving with that too if there's some other emotion bubbling to the surface, and really allowing yourself to tap into how it feels after. Because I think it's important to build that connection and the new pathway, that it's safe to feel. It's nobody got hurt in this expression, and to let your inner child know, maybe teaching them a bit about why it's okay and safe and healthy and important to feel anger, why you want to do this, and tapping into how powerful or calm or alive it feels after expressing anger is a great way to do that. So now I'm going to show you a way to move with anger and express anger with a partner, a friend, someone that you trust and feel safe with and want to explore emotions with together. So I highly recommend that someone you're doing this with has watched this video, and not to just jump in and be like, hey, can you just stand there and do that thing with your hands and I'm just gonna go at you. It's really important that this is a very conscious process together. And it can be challenging to not take things personally if someone is releasing their anger towards us. So maybe just having a negotiation about what feels safe and what feels okay within the parameters of the relationship, and with whoever's holding the space for you if this is something they're new to. Just having a real clear conversation around what this looks like. So I'm going to be doing this with my friend Raph, and I feel totally comfortable to not take anything personally that they say and that they need to express and let out. So I'm fine for there to be projections and stuff, and I'm holding the space here for their anger and letting whatever is there be there. So basically I'm going to put it in my hands like this, and if there's it's really just each person needs to tap into what feels safe and just how much somebody can push, and those things. In a group setting it can be a bit easier to have someone else kind of at the person's back and that kind of thing, but this is just a simple way, and I'll show you two. One where just one person is expressing the anger, and another where both people are expressing the anger, which is something that my husband and I do quite a lot together. Alrighty. This is just you first. So taking a deep breath in, and whenever you're ready. And after you've expressed, you may want to shake your body, take some deep breaths, just take a moment to be present with what's there and what's coming up. Okay, so now we're going to show you how to do it with two people. This is something that, especially if you're having like a dialogue with a partner and there's a lot of anger coming up, it's really, really hard to work out anything logical when the emotion is high. So doing this first is an amazing practice, though quite confronting. And, like I mentioned before, it can be really useful to have a witness holding space for this kind of thing, but also exploring with it, I highly recommend. So just take a deep breath in and let it go. Oh, how could you? I hate you! I hate you! Oh, you're the worst guy! You're doing this to me again! I hate this so much! I fucking don't want to do it! I don't want to do it anymore! So anger can be an incredibly connective and connecting emotion. And also just to know that if your partner isn't someone that you want to explore this with, but you do have a friend that feels safe to, you can totally do that. And like just then when Raph and I were expressing, like, I don't think either of us were expressing about the other one that was there. And so it's okay. And like when we let it out, the stuff that needs to come out comes out when we're open to it and we trust enough to just give it a go. Anything you want to share, Raph?
It is most likely that other things will come out other than what you were intending to express.
Yeah,
and
the logical mind is like, oh yes, this thing, and blah, 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 blah.
And then it's almost like the logical mind goes, oh, here's an opening for expression. Let's send the rest of it out with it. It's like literally throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and by letting it out in little chunks like this means that it comes out less explosively, hopefully.
Thank you so much for joining me in this masterclass. If you're here, then it's because you're a person who wants more for yourself. You want more healing, more feeling alive. You maybe feel a bit lost. You maybe feel a bit stuck. You maybe feel a bit confused or afraid. And maybe it's not really in your life in the way that you'd like it to be. Maybe you're ready to feel more alive. Maybe you're ready to make a deeper commitment to your healing and to showing up for yourself. I want you to know that I believe in you. I believe in your individual, unique journey and path, and whatever it looks like right now, whatever it looks like in a moment, in a week, I trust deeply in that. And thank you for sharing this space with me and showing up. I would love to hear whatever has come up for you. Any questions that you have, I am here for. And this is the work that I do. I offer space for people to explore with what is real for them. So please reach out, whatever's going on for you. This is my purpose in life. And I know that because I have moved with my emotions a lot. So I'm in this for the long haul, and I would love to hear from you. Before I go, I'm just gonna do a couple of deep breaths and kind of ground myself into this space where I am right now, and invite you to do the same. So just sitting wherever you are, taking a deep breath in through the nose, letting out a sigh. Taking a deep breath in through the nose, letting out a sigh. Moving your shoulders a bit, letting them drop. Imagining just a bit of tension, tightness leaving the body. Maybe checking in with your inner child and seeing if there's anything there. Letting yourself know that you're safe in this moment. It's safe to be with what is real and true for you. And there's space for you. Feeling your legs and your butt on the chair. Maybe feeling your back on a chair if you're sitting there. Feeling your feet on whatever surface they're on. And imagining yourself grounding into the earth. Feeling that sense of solidity and being held underneath wherever you are right now. And imagining from your body roots coming out and spreading into the earth. Feeling yourself connected, held, and with that solid foundation and support from the earth underneath you. Breathing in to your heart. Breathing in to your gut, your intuition, your womb space. Thank you so much for being here with me in this.